You ready? Roll call. Oh, you're. Okay. Representative Henderson?
Here.
Representative Larson? Here. Representative Sherwood? Here. Representative Stiff?
Here.
Representative Walters? Here. Representative Swanitzer?
Here.
Chairman Nicholas?
Referrals, we were going to kind of do the easy ones first, which, this is Cyrus here. There he is. Come on up, Cyrus. House Bill 79. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring you House Bill 79. This bill is a product of the Select Committee and the work that we've did over the interim. It really comes around the discussion around, obviously we like to think of ourselves as pro-business friendly, and a lot of that starts in the Secretary of State's office, right? Because they handle all the filings for LLCs and whatnot. And something that's kind of kept some businesses away is our lack of an expedited filing process. I think we might be the only or one of the few remaining states that does not have an expedited filing process on the books yet, and this bill intends to address that. So I think it might be reasonable to ask, what's some of the business we might be losing out on? And potentially quite a bit. I know I've heard plenty of stories, and I think some folks might testify this as well, that there are a lot of companies, when they're doing some of these incorporations or a big merger and acquisition, when they start looking at places to domicile, they look at Wyoming, and when they realize that we don't have an expedited filing option, they just immediately say that's a non-starter. And a large part for the reason why is because some of these companies need a date certain, especially if they're going public on some of these, the NASDAQ or some of those exchanges. They need to be able to report to the SEC and to the exchange that they have a date certain of when the merger is effective. So that's kind of the background there. Obviously, if you look in the bill, sorry, I've just got so many tabs pulled up on my computer here. I mean, it really is just on page 2, lines 1 through 15, where for those titles, Title 17, 34, and 40, which is our securities filings, trademarks, that it allows the secretary to set fees up to $5,000. It doesn't have to be that number. Obviously, kind of the state that is the champion of this is obviously Delaware. They kind of have a schedule, or a tiered or stair-stepped options for their expedited filings. They usually have a base fee, and some of them, if you need it to be filed within the hour, it can be, I think, up to $1,000 or $1,500. I might have to double check on that, but that's kind of why we have the language in there. So I'm happy to go more in depth, or else I'd be happy to stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Tell us about the corrected copy, because it changed a few things.
Mr. Chairman, so, Mr. Chairman, during the House Corporations Committee, there's a lot of discussion around the need for salary and positions. Obviously, I'm going to let the Secretary speak to that need and that specific ask. I could certainly appreciate that ultimately we will need people to process these types of requests. Again, because some of these folks, it's not just expedited within a certain amount of time, 2 weeks or a week. Some of these filings, these expedited filings are, that day, within a few hours. And so there's going to be some manpower needed to process some of those filings. But in terms of more specifically, that was a request that came from the Secretary during the committee meetings, and that's why you've got this here before you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Representative
Western, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is that, because we have expedited filing now, when we go on, use online services, that expedites, and this is for the in-person, you know, we're coming here, they're not online, and we're trying to do that. How many of them in a year are you thinking you're going to see that are willing to pay a fee for an expedited time?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I recall correctly, the statute says, for example, if you file for an LLC, I believe,
15 days.
yeah, I believe it's 15 days exactly. So this is just designed to make sure that the folks, you know, all of us that do have an LLC, the small guys continue to have, you know, prompt and reasonable service from the office while allowing them also to process these. But Mr. Vice Chair, to your point, I can't give you an exact average of over the last, 5 years, we've turned away 5 companies a year. So I don't have that kind of specific information on what that would look like going forward and, in that type of scenario. But there have been quite a few over the years I've heard of. And I think some folks will testify to this about the frequency.
Mr. Chairman, but my understanding, historically, the Secretary of State's office has always taken care of expedited filings if needed, if they were time sensitive. And so what I'm trying to get my head around is I don't think there's a statutory requirement for expedited filings. You would be making it as such. And so if so, how many are we anticipating of these walking through the door saying, I've got a time-sensitive filing, I need it done now? Because we're saying in this bill that it is going to be significant enough that we want 2 full-time employees to manage this.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I think we might be defining expedite maybe a little bit differently here in the sense that right now, if someone has an LLC, they can certainly make an inquiry for faster processing, where this creates an explicit part of statute for them to charge more for expedited, like I said, usually within an hour or two, that level of expedited. So in terms of the actual work and that will be necessary and the man hours and the staff hours to do that, I'm obviously not the expert. I'll let the secretary speak to that, but.
Well, and I appreciate what we're trying to do, and I appreciate, even though there's always been some resistance to increase or charge a fee in the Secretary of State's office, that's fine, but I'm just trying to figure if the volume of work really warrants 2 new full-time employees.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, again, I can't come to you and say, each expedited filing will take X man hours or staff hours, which means, that's going to require X amount of new FTEs. I don't have that exact type of, data for you, but.
So I think historically, they've had a contract or the ability in their Series 900 to do contract work that could, is that something they could do in lieu of having 2 more full-time employees and growing government?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, that's certainly an option. Again, I'm going to let the Secretary speak more in depth on those kind of specific options.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Western, I want to acknowledge that we try to stay in our lane on a re-referral. We're only talking about the money and the positions, but I can't help myself. The draft language of the bill is really broad in that it applies to the filing of any document filed pursuant to Title 17, which has all of our Business Corporation Act, Limited Liability Company Act. And the language on page 2, line 4 says, notwithstanding any other law to the contrary, the Secretary of State may charge a fee as specified to expedite the filing of a document. So the question really is, if you know, is there any objection to narrowing this so that it only applies to the merger situation or to the amendment of articles of incorporation so that it doesn't apply to every filing? Because in theory, the language seems so broad that of the 34 LLCs that I filed on New Year's Eve for clients, that instead of the filing fee being $100, it could have been $5,000 for each one of those. And so is there any objection to narrowing it to achieve the purpose you're describing?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stith, I personally have no objection. Again, ultimately, what we're trying to get at here is just to allow an option on the books for expedited filing for these, generally speaking, it's going to be larger corporations and companies. So if we want to put some of those sideboards to ensure that some of those, the small guy is not getting a major fee increase, as long as the language is tight enough to get what we're trying to do, I have no problem with that.
So I'm curious, because if major corporations that want to do this, they'll call a law firm in Cheyenne, they'll get what they need, they'll walk over and they'll file it in one day. About that simple.
Chairman Nicholas, I mean, certainly that can't happen. It depends on the type of situation and what the client's needs are. Again, there have been instances in the past where some of these larger corporations, again, for ones that are going public, that need to have a date certain that is required by regulation, when they see that we cannot guarantee that that day on that hour that it will be, or by a certain hour that it will be processed, it becomes a non-starter for them. And so that's the kind of scenario that the business that we're trying to capture here and that has been turned away from Wyoming historically.
Well, if I was representing one of those companies, I could say I could have it on that day, on that time, at that dollar. As long as I've got 2 days and I've got the documentation.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly appreciate that, and I will let some of the other folks here in the room testify to the more specifics of the scenario. But again, I think for the ones that need that specific date certain, they get kind of nervous because there's nothing in the statute that they see that they for sure that this will be, that date certain will be adhered to in their filings with the SEC or the index, or the exchange, excuse me.
Okay, further questions for the bringer? Okay, public comment on the bill. Come on, everyone that wants to come on up and just sit down, so we can kind of do it informal and just keep going. So go ahead, Matt.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. I'm Matt Kaufman. I'm a partner with the law firm of Hathaway & Coons here in Cheyenne. I'm also a governor appointee to the Select Committee and was one of the original proponents of this bill. I just simply wanted to provide a few comments, Mr. Chairman, from my perspective on this bill. It is a tremendous competitive disadvantage for Wyoming. I'm one of those corporate practitioners that's part of listservs of corporate attorneys across the country. This is a routine discussion about Wyoming, that we don't have an expedited filing process. Many of the reasons that the co-chair Western just recited, a lot of it is in the context of regulated entities like banks or companies that are going through a regulated SEC fundraising process, where there has to be a date certain filing for some accomplishment of a corporate action. What happens in these transactions, a lot of times it's mergers and acquisitions, conversions, or as the representative said, amendments to certificates of incorporation, thing like that. Those are the most common. But often what happens in those instances is those are paper filings. We're not talking about the creation of LLCs and corporations that can happen instantaneously. Our filing system is fantastic for that. In fact, of the states I interact with, we're one of the best. But those paper filing instances, the only thing that those regulators have to rely on is the 15-day filing deadline. Yes, Mr. Chairman, to your question, someone like me can walk into Mr. Crossman's office and say, please file this, today, and make sure it gets done today. For regulatory purposes, though, that leaves a lot of uncertainty, and it's just keeping people from filing here. What we see practically happen is companies will have a Delaware corporation and a Wyoming LLC, and they're trying to consider which entity is going to be the surviving entity. They're just converting and merging into Delaware because they can get the expedited filing. That's what they want. So from my standpoint, again, it's nothing to do with the quality of the filings. I wish I could speak to the number of these. Ironically, we had one arrive this morning that we were just talking to the Secretary of State's office about, exact circumstance that we're dealing with here. It's a Wyoming-based entity that is trying to undergo a merger. They need to close it on March 8th for certain regulatory purposes, and they're trying to figure out how to do that. And again, can we coordinate it? We can, but we're relying on just a good faith informal relationship with the Secretary of State's office to do that. The market attorneys that we work with definitely want to see a date certain filing mechanism. States like Delaware, for example, they have a 24-hour filing, and then they have a same-day filing, or I'm sorry, I said that. 1 and 2, I'm sorry, same day and the next day. So there's even graduated options for filing. Again, I'll leave that up to the Secretary of State. What we're just advocating for is having a mechanism like that for these instances is hugely important.
Go ahead.
So, Matt, can you help me then in the bill, because what is the time frame that you want these and I appreciate charging the fee, and I appreciate wanting a date certain, but am I missing that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you, so if I'm understanding the question correctly, what would the fee be, or what?
No, how much time, how much time are you allowing for an expedited?
Yeah,
One day, 2 days, same day?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, I think we're relying on the Secretary of State's office to create whatever that schedule might look like, if it's a 1 day or a 2 day or a 3 day option, but some options where you could pay an accelerated fee for whatever that time frame is.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm just a little surprised that you guys didn't, do you have a recommendation? I mean, what if you don't like what the Secretary of State says? What if it's 15 days?
Mr. Chairman, fair point. I think what we were, in the committee discussions, I think what we were, again, relying on is the Secretary of State to recognize that the most commonly used expedite filing in Delaware is the 1 and 2 day options. So we're assuming it's not going to be a 7 or 10 day, option, but I guess fair point, Mr. Chairman, that we didn't specify.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm Chuck Gray, the Wyoming Secretary of State. To my left is Colin Crossman, the Director of our Business Division, and Joe Rubino. To my right, our Policy Director and Counsel. Certainly supportive of House Bill 79, have been that way in committee and throughout the process. Now, Mr. Chairman, I was going to speak a little bit to the appropriation, focus on the positions. Is that okay?
Well, yeah, as long as you tie them to the need of the bill.
Well, I mean, Mr. Chairman, we've experienced enormous growth in the Secretary of State's office, 30% growth in 1 year, up $8.5 million. We bring in the last fiscal year over $52 million. And with that enormous growth, because of the great service to my left that the business division provides, has come with some need for us to address the current staffing there. And so we obviously had the upgrade that went through, and that didn't happen. So the next option would be positions. And so that's what came through the corporations committee. I would say that I think the understanding of our office when they talked about creating a special revenue account was intercepting the business filing fees and using that to fund the 2 positions. With the revenues that our office brings in, that would be paid for in a day and a half off of fiscal year 23. The 2 new positions would be paid for in a day and a half of the revenue that our office receives. But obviously, cabining it just to the expedited filings, we don't know how many of those are going to be. And that's the challenge there in terms of certainty and actually paying for it, and ever getting certainty with those positions. That the way that's drafted, we don't think it works. And there's also challenges in terms of tying it to our business filing fees broadly. So I think the best way to go with it would be to do it out of the general fund. So thank you.
So I've got a couple of questions.
Yes,
Are you fully staffed
Mr. Chairman.
Are you
In the
fully
business
staffed?
division?
in your office?
Yes, we had 2 vacancies that we are filling currently. The one we were interviewing this week,
And what's your,
and the other one we're about to go out.
on your business division, how many employees do you have?
11.
And the vacancies, are they in the business?
One in the business.
What position is that?
That's the registrar.
Addressing this issue, I'd like to hear your response as to the need to have an expedited law, because as I understand it, anyone that walks into your office with the proper paperwork will pays the fee, gets the stamp in 1 day.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Crossman. Well, but first I'll say one thing, Mr. Chairman, is that we've, this was a request from the blockchain committee. And so I'm always for increasing services of our office and good customer service. So we wanted to cooperate with the committee. So, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Crossman too, in responding to that. So thank you.
Typically, if somebody were to walk in with a document, if it is obviously it's going to be a paper document in that case, first of all, if it is a name check document, like the creation of an entity or a name change, that is required to be entered into the queue. So they cannot leave with a stamp immediately.
To DEQ?
Into the queue, into the processing queue. So if they walk in with a name change, that has to be entered into the processing queue. So they have to wait until we get to it, basically. If it is another type of document that does not require a name check or a priority on the name, then if we are able to accommodate an immediate filing, we do what we can, but that is not guaranteed.
When you say into the queue, you just put that into the computer and run a name check, right?
No, sir. They have to wait until all other documents that have a name check before them have received their name.
So how many documents a day do you have in the queue to have a name check?
We are operating at roughly 12 days out at this point. So I don't know how many documents that will be, but we're talking several hundred documents per day.
Explain what you do in the queue of the name check. What's the process?
So when an entity needs a name check, they have to be put into the series of documents. So if you were to come over with a document today that required a name check, we would put it into today's pile of documents. And then when we get to today's pile of documents in about 11, 12 days, then we will be processing those. And so all of the previous days will have a chance to take that name before yours.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Let me follow up, Mr. Crossman. So the several hundred documents that are in your queue, how would you describe them by category? So trademark applications might be one type of document, in that an amendment to an Articles of Incorporation might be another type of document that would be sitting in the queue. Maybe a request with respect to a merger of two companies might be another type of document. So two-part question. One is, I listed three categories. If there are others, could you mind just outlining what those would be? And then by volume, what's taking up the most of it? Is it amendments, like your ordinary run-of-the-mill amendments that are doing it, or trademark applications, or something else?
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Representative, there are many, many documents that would be filed in our office. All of them can roughly be classified as amendments or initial filings. The initial filings of approximately 4 different business types, the big ones, LLCs, profit corporations, nonprofits, as well as a couple of other categories and classifications of those, can be filed online. And those are not the kind of documents we're talking about. We're talking about basically all amendments, many annual reports, all trademarks, trade names, those cannot be filed online. Limited liability, limited partnerships, initial filings for non-standard entity types, statutory trusts, things like that, as well as any modifications by amendment, dissolution, all of those basically working documents for a corporation that have to be filed later. So all of that would have to be handled basically on paper, either in person or through the mail. On the second part of that, which documents are we handling most of? The vast majority of documents that we receive are your annual reports and address change documents, so which are counted as amendments. Those are actually free, so those don't have a fee associated with them at all. Not the annual reports, the address changes. Beyond that, we're talking about things like people changing their registered agent. Those are fairly high volume. And then you get into individual amendments for each entity, of which any one entity may not ever have one. but there's many. We have over 600,000 active entities, so that means that at any one time, someone is doing something.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Just one second, go ahead.
So, Mr. Kaufman, Wyoming has a great reputation for service, and so thank you for that. It's important that we maintain that and do it. But so what I'm trying to figure out as we look at this bill as re-referred is we're trying to establish a expedited filing statute that says if they come in and it's either 1 day, 2 days, whatever that is. I'm still trying to get in my head as we contemplate the appropriations for this, based on what they're saying the need is for expedited filings, how many of that type of filings, plural, would you anticipate or do you normally see in a year? And does that warrant 2 full-time employees? Because that's what the bill's basing it on. Or are we saying that you're just busy and you're pushing the 15-day limit closer than you would like to in getting filings out, and you need 2 more people? Can you just kind of clarify all of that to me?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, Mr. Representative. Once you introduce an expedited filing process of any kind, the ability to manage the queue of documents gets more tricky. Right now, effectively, things are processed in the order received, plus or minus. However, once we have the ability for people to pay, then we have to honor those requests. And at the moment, it's hard to speculate how many people will want to pay for that expedited process because we don't have it. And do I get calls routinely of people asking, can I just pay for that? Yes, I do. I've probably had several dozen in the year I've been working here. Of course, I turn them away. We don't have that here. But once it's a published and build out system, then I would expect people will use it. Either whether that they may not even need to use it. They may just want to pay extra. I know that from experience and anecdote of people who are currently filing in Delaware, you just pay for their expedited process because if you don't, and Delaware doesn't have the 15-day statutory deadline that we do, but last I heard, you wouldn't get your file stamped copy back from them for many, many weeks if you didn't pay for the expedited process. Obviously, that's not the situation with us. You'd still have that 15-day deadline, but will people pay for it to just have a date certain, even if they don't specifically need it for some regulatory compliance reason? Absolutely. I think there are a lot of corporations who will do that. Will normal individual Wyomingites need to do that? No, they will not.
Thank you.
So is there anything that prevents you now by rule or reg, by creating an expedited filing fee and procedure?
Mr. Chair, I don't believe we have the authority to create a procedure that would invoke a payment from someone without the statutory authority to do so.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, moving somebody up in line, I think it would also be another piece that I would question the statutory basis for. So, can I clarify one thing I said earlier?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, just want to clarify, we're completing 1 hiring, so technically it is 3 vacancies, not 2. But we're in the last stages of getting it down to 2.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify, how quickly can it be done now with what you have?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Representative, depends on the type of document you're trying to file. If you were attempting to create a new LLC, you can use the online system and you would have it within minutes. You would have it within minutes. There'd be no delay. So You would go onto the Secretary of State website, fill out the paperwork on the website, pay with your credit card or debit card, and then several minutes later, or well, within seconds, you would receive your formation documents from the Secretary of State. Those are not the kinds of documents that this would, I mean, this would technically apply to those sorts of documents, but there would be no reason to, because that online system already exists. These expedited filings are primarily geared at things that are not already online, and which there is no other process to handle an expedition. Also, I would like to go back to a previous point, if I may.
Can I follow up?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So would this be disruptive? As you are now, if it takes what you said it takes and how it happens, would it be disruptive in your own circumstances?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Representative, yes, potentially, and that is one of the reasons for the additional staff is to help manage the queue as we get, if people were to start paying for these documents to be expedited, we would need to process them effectively, the expediting process establishes multiple queues. So right now we have one queue, it's 15, up to 15 days. All documents go in this queue. Once you create a series of expedited classes, let's say we follow a Delaware model where we have a 2-day, a 1-day, and a 2-hour process. Now we effectively have 4 separate queues. And so the 2-hour process in Delaware, they will charge you over, up to upwards of $1,000 for that. That's not a queue that is going to get used a lot. But there is a reason to have it. If somebody says, if you're at a closing table and the real estate agent, the real estate attorney doing the closing suddenly needs a specific document on file at the Secretary of State to complete the sale, that 2-hour deadline might be extremely valuable to you, and $1,000 is not a big deal. A 1-day or 2-day expedited queue, however, that starts to get where the price is probably going to be sufficiently modest that people will want to use it. Well, now we have to manage the 15-day queue that's statutory, plus the 1-day queue and the 2-day queue. And what happens if we get more than 1 day's worth of documents that are now in the 1-day queue? Okay, with our current staff. That is something that could easily happen with the volume of filings that we have right now. And so then we would be in the process, in the need to potentially refund people who we couldn't get to their documents in time, or start handing out lots of overtime to make sure that those documents get processed on that time frame. So the problem with an expedited filing process is we have to manage those queues, and that's where either there needs to be a technical solution, or basically a capital solution, or a labor solution. And at the moment, we have the possibility of a labor solution to manage those queues properly, to bring in that revenue and provide that service for people.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, so I think what I heard you say was that the current draft doesn't work very well with respect to creating this special new account, because I presume the revenue would come in haphazardly, slowly. You couldn't guarantee that someone's paycheck would get paid if they depended just on the special account revenue, at least not for perhaps a long time. Do you have any sense for, if nothing changed about the bill and the Standing Committee amendment, do you have any sense for how long it would take to get enough money in the special revenue account to pay for these two positions?
Mr. Chairman, I haven't thought about that. It was an amendment done. Our understanding of the amendment was different from how it ended up drafted, I think, in the committee. So we've been looking at it for about a day. On our regular filings, it would be paid for again in a day and a half. If it was the whole sum total of what we produce, day and a half.
Secretary Gray, if I could just clear up what I thought I may be misunderstanding the number of FTEs the bill indicates 2, and I thought I heard you say 3. Am I just correct, 2? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, it's 2. I was referring to the vacancy question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Secretary Gray, also, we have this in the standing committee amendment, and there's nothing we can do about that here, it's just for education. They create that account. Would it seem more of the normal, if we do this, to just let those fees come in and go to the general fund like normal and just fund this out of the general fund, or you made some mention of that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Larson, yes.
Thank you.
So committee, my inclination is, because we've got to kick out 4 more bills in the next 25 minutes to re-refer, and some of them, those are complicated. So just to expedite this, I suggest that we do a do pass, and then we'll take this up. I see lots of different issues with the bill as it's drafted, but we're not going to fix those problems today.
Motion to pass.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Larson?
Aye.
Representative Sherwood? Representative Stith?
Aye.
Representative Walters? Representative Swanitzer?
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas?
No? Okay, then are done. Okay. Next. Might as well do the one that I've got in my head. Let's do 52. Property tax homestead exemption. Anyone want to speak on the bill?
Is that out?
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman,
Nice to see you.
does anyone want to talk about property tax?
No.
Do I hear one? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brenda Henson, Director of the Department of Revenue. The first bill on your agenda would be House Bill 52. Just some guidance for me. So the fiscal note as prepared was based on the bill as drafted, and there is a standing committee amendment that expands that. How would you like me to approach the discussion?
Tell us what the standing amendment costs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the standing, so first of all, this particular bill relates to property tax year 25, 26, 27. Which are fiscal year 26, 27, and 28. The amendment expanded the amount. For example, on the first category, for anyone that's less than 65 years of age, it expanded it from $50,000 fair market value exemption to $100,000. Using a statewide average mill levy, that tax dollar savings to a property owner went from $323 to $653 with the amendment. The next category would be
323 to 6.
$323 to $653.
So basically double.
Mr. Chairman, where's that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, page 2, line 11. The standing committee amendment amends actually line 13 where it says 50,000 to 100,000. So 50,000 based on a statewide average mill levy would have been 323 tax dollars, and now it's 653. The next category, which starts on line 16, was 100,000. That's been amended to 150,000. So that end result is $646 originally, based on the 100,000, is now $969 based on 150.
Again, please.
646 to 969.
Thank you.
The next category are those that are 75 years or older, and they changed that from the 150 that you'll see at the top of page 3 to 200,000. That took that amount from $969 to $1,307.
That helps. Now, what about the cost of the programs? How does that?
So, Mr. Chairman, the fiscal note provided for $88,400,000. That was based on 2023 assessed values and then an estimate of how many are primary residents, because there is an application process for this program. It is administered through the county assessor's offices, so there's no administrative cost to the Department of Revenue. The CAMA system can accommodate this, applying these exemptions. And so related to the $88,400,000, the only thing that we can do is basically increase that by approximately, I would say, $35 million. And that's simply somewhat accounting for adding a $50,000 amount to each one of those levels. The other piece of information is that this bill is available to property owners for properties that are not only single-family, but up to 4-family structures. It does include the associated land. It is, though, required that the owner of the property occupy one of those units if it's a multifamily. But it does provide for that. Now, when I make that statement about the fiscal note, it should be noted at the bottom of page 5, it speaks to, once we determine what the revenue loss was for property taxes, if there's not a sufficient amount of funding, then the Department of Revenue would have to reduce the amount that is provided to backfill this on a proportional basis. So that being said, we just hope that our estimate is sufficient. But it is very, very hard to determine. We don't know which homes are occupied by the owner. We don't know the value of those homes. Even if we were to be able to tell you how many homes, we just don't know those values. So it is a very, very much an estimate on that future cost.
Mr. Chairman.
And so, but the process would be, you would have to have a certain dollar sum appropriated to the account in order to effectuate it.
So, Mr. Chairman, this implements for the 2025 tax year. So once the mill levies are established, then county treasurer or county assessor, that language is not in the bill yet, but somebody is going to have to report to the Department of Revenue the total amount of this exemption, so that we then can take from that account and provide the county treasurer with the money so that they can distribute that basically as if the taxpayer paid it. Very similar to how the Veterans Exemption Program works. And those funds right now are under the state treasurer's office. And we provide a report to the state treasurer, and the state treasurer sends the money directly for the veterans exemption to county treasurers. But that's how we would envision this process working.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Henson, so what happens if the appropriation is 88.4 million, but we have the standing committee amendment that actually would imply $123 million, and there's just not enough money to go around? What happens? Do the county treasurers just get shorted on the money that they receive from the state, or is there a mechanism for that in the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stith, we would be required, based on the language at the bottom of page 5, to reduce the amount that we provide to the county treasurer, which means they would reduce the amount that they distribute to the local entities.
So it's prorated.
This happens sometimes with the Veterans Exemption Program, and then you see the state treasurer come in
Ask for money.
during the next supplemental and ask for that additional amount, and then it's typically, so it's possible that I would be sitting here again at some point.
Director Hanson, so this, this total appropriation spans the course of 3 fiscal years or calendar years?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, I believe that it is just the amount for 2. But I would have to verify with Legislative Service Office.
And a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, but this, this homestead exemption, I'll call it a backfill from the state. The exemption's going to be in place for how long? And then the backfill is going to be required for how long?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, on the top of page 2, you'll see that this exemption is repealed on December 31st, 2027, which means it would be applicable for tax year 25, 26, and 27, not be available for 28, but those are fiscal years 26, 27, and 28.
Yeah.
And I believe the last page states that we would need to remit back to the general fund any excess funds on December 31st of 2027.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that's where I get the 3 years for the total appropriations, if I see it right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Are we ready to go, Mr. Chairman?
Any other public comment? Seeing none, close the discussion on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to at least make an amendment. Move to pass. Move to pass with the amendment.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go back to the original bill, or at least delete the additional appropriations in the standing committee amendment. And so my amendment would be on page 2, line 1, go back to the original amount of 50,000 and delete the 100,000. On page 2, line 19, delete the 100,000, or put in $100,000 and delete the amended $150,000. And then on line 3, swap those amounts out as well, deleting the 200,000 that was put in the standing committee amendment, replace it with the original bill amount of 150,000.
Okay, do we have a second? Second, Representative Stitt.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I just have a point of order or clarification is, I think we can change the amount appropriated on line 5, line 15, but I'm not sure we're allowed to change the homestead exemption amounts themselves, because that was a different committee who made that choice. I don't think we get to do that.
Actually, I think we can.
I tend to agree, because those aren't appropriations that the representative is trying to amend. Those are the values at which the exemption.
No,
that's right. Fair enough.
And so that's not appropriation.
Well, it's more of what we want to do versus can do, isn't it?
That indeed is true. I would withdraw that amendment, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
And Mr. Chairman, I can make an amendment.
go ahead.
And Mr. Chairman, I would go in, Mr. Chairman, and move on page 5, section 2, which removes the appropriation. If we're going to have these exemptions, I think the community needs to recognize what these exemptions cost. The state can't be to backfill forever, and so I think it's just wise policy to make sure everyone knows what the cost of doing business is.
So you want to increase the 88?
I'm taking it all out. Removing the appropriation, which is all of section 2.
Actually, I don't know if we can remove the whole section. We could remove the number.
You remove the number, which is effectively the whole section, Mr. Chairman. And that is something you can do, is to re-refer. We can affect the funding in it, and that's one of the amendments.
So, Mr.
Go ahead.
Was there a second for that motion? Okay, Mr. Chairman, I guess I speak against the motion. I mean, the representative is correct that this number 88,400,000 no longer works. It no longer reflects the actual cost of the bill, right? But if we leave the appropriation at 88,400,000, just the effect of it will be that the treasurers will receive less than full reimbursement, is the effect of it, as Ms. Henson explained. So I guess I'm on and against the amendment for that reason.
So it seems to me that if we can either we could take it to zero, or we could cut it in half, and say you don't know the number, or we could take the projected number so people know what reality is. I'm inclined to go with Clark, as well. At a minimum, we ought to put 130, whatever that number is, 123 in it versus the 88, because as we walk through each one of these bills, we need to know what the numbers are as close as we can.
Vote on mine.
Well, I move to amend. No, actually, yeah, let's just vote on yours. All those in favor of deleting section 2, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. That motion fails. We have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to amend the dollar figure on page 5, line 15, to reflect the projected actual cost as reflected by Ms. Henson. I don't have that exact number in front of me, so if Ms. Henson could provide that.
It's
123, so replace 88,400,000 with $123.4 million.
123 point,
Yeah, we're big spenders.
right.
Probably tax relief. Probably tax relief.
Okay, discussion?
Yeah, well.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. That motion passes. Any other action on the bill? Okay, roll call. Do pass.
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative Larson. No. Representative Sherwood. Aye. Representative Stith.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer.
No.
Chairman Nicholas.
No. Okay, next one. Goes to the bottom. No, actually, to go to the bottom, we have to recommend a do not pass. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Which one you want to do next?
I apologize. I believe I took them out of order from how you posted them, so.
Oh, that's all right.
My bad. Did you want to discuss House Bill 103?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, House Bill 103 is a bill that changes the level of assessment on residential property from the current 9.5% to 8.3%. But it is contingent upon the Wyoming electors passing the constitutional amendment in the 2024 election. Bottom line is a 12.6% decrease in tax amount for property owners across the state. The fiscal note does have the estimates of what revenue will be lost, but it doesn't appear to me that there's an actual appropriation in the bill. Just FYI for the committee, that in order for us to change the level of assessment, that is a function we can do in the computer system, mass appraisal system.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the reason it's before our committee today is because in the corrected standing committee, and there is an appropriation of $87.1 million.
Yeah.
So that's what this bill is that amendment.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I missed that amendment.
Do you have the corrected copy?
Mr. Chairman, I honestly cannot tell you what the 87 So is that $87.1 million to backfill local government?
Correct.
Okay. I apologize.
Go ahead, Representative.
So, Mr. Chairman, move the bill. And Mr. Chairman,
Can we ask,
Is that a move the bill do pass?
move the bill do pass.
Okay.
And, Mr. Chairman, I have a proposed amendment.
Go ahead.
So I'll switch gears on this one and go with where Representative Walters was before and recommend that and move that on page 1, line 18 of the corrected copy of the Standing Committee amendment, that we delete the appropriation from the current value to 0.
Move in second. Discussion. Why? Explain.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we just spent $123 million on the last one, and if the floor wants to backfill, this one, the floor can do that. The bill as originally drafted had no backfill. It was just, you just get shorted, you're done, and there's no appropriation. So was the original intent of the bill, to just cut the taxes and cut the revenue to the school districts and the weed and pest districts and all the other districts. And they just live with 12% less residential property tax.
That sounds fun. Go ahead.
Question for Director Hanson. This 87.1 million, the way I read it, will be divided. But the reduction would be a statutory change based on the constitutional amendment. So there would be a need for this, for a similar type of appropriation every single year going forward, because that revenue would be lost. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, that is accurate.
When does the Constitution go into effect if enacted?
Mr. Chairman, it would go before the voters in 2024 and then be effective January 1, 2025.
January 1. That's what. Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
this is on the amendment, right?
Yeah, of the amendment.
On the amendment.
All those opposed?
Show of hands.
Show of hands. All those in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. All right, then it passes. That goes to 0. That's about all we can do on this bill. As amended. Roll call.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Larson?
Aye.
Representative Sherwood? Representative Stith?
Aye.
Representative Walters? Representative Swanitzer?
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas?
Aye. Okay, keep going.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 134. This is the property tax deferral program. As you know, there is currently a program that is a county option deferral program. The only county at this point that has implemented it that has it currently implemented is Teton County. Sheridan County had it for a short amount of time, but they really didn't have any interest in it as far as the taxpayers taking advantage of the program. So what this bill does is it moves it deletes the county option program and it moves the administration of this to the Department of Revenue. So it starts with 2025 property taxes. The bill itself has an appropriation of $200,000. Now, where that came from was the bill that was considered last year. The only information that we had was in Teton County. I think last year they had 2 deferrals, and we definitely just pulled this number out and said, you know, we have no idea how much interest there will be in the program. This bill requires that we basically fund. If they apply and they qualify for the property tax deferral program, then this fund of $200,000 is where we would take the money and make all of the taxes whole. We basically pay the taxes for that property owner. And then we administer a program where upon certain circumstances, then that tax is paid and comes due. Now, it should be noted that there's a committee of amendment that would change, because right now the program says you can defer up to half of your property taxes, and they did entertain and pass an amendment to allow the entire amount to be deferred. We looked at surrounding states. Colorado has a deferral program, and the entire state of Colorado has approximately 1,181 takers in the state of Colorado. We estimated perhaps we might have 300. We just don't know what that amount will be. I anticipate that if this program does take off and we see a lot of interest, we'll have to come back and get additional money. We are not asking for any administrative cost. This committee knows that unless it's proven that I need more staff, I'm not going to ask for it. So we're going to start out administering this with spreadsheets and Word documents and communicating that way with property owners to see if they're interested in the program. And so the only appropriation is just $200,000 at this time, just to have a starting point. We know that if Teton County is any indication, if that's the county, the median residential property tax bill in Teton County in 2023 was over $11,000. So, this would provide them with an opportunity to defer the entire amount. But that's a whole lot different than Niobrara County, Washakie County. We could be deferring $1,100 for a property owner. So until we have some experience administering this, I wish I had a better number for you, but I don't.
Mr. Chairman?
So if 20 people from Fremont County, or from Teton County want to apply for this, you won't have enough money.
Perhaps. Now, Mr. Chairman, what happens in the county is that they budget X number of dollars, and it's somewhat a first come, first serve. The first people that apply, they have X amount of dollars for the tax deferral. At least that's how I understand that they've administered that program. I don't really see that we've got a lot of options there. I really feel like the first year, if that $200,000 is not sufficient, we'll just have to hold off on granting this property tax deferral till we have more money available.
Mr. Chairman? So again, the program is an option for the county, correct?
Mr. Chairman, and Representative Larson, that's correct. And we
Okay.
only have one county that has implemented.
Right, and so I guess I missed that part, so I need to ask a couple of questions. And so then, if the county elects to do that, per what I heard you say, you would contemplate that they would anticipate and budget accordingly, or adjust their budget accordingly to accommodate those deferred payments?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, I apologize. I must not have articulated it well. With this bill, the county option program goes away.
Oh,
It becomes a statewide deferral program administered by the Department of Revenue. And so we have to be the ones to front that
there you go.
money.
Thank you, that helped.
Sorry.
Okay, further questions?
Not for this, not for here. How do you want to state that?
All right,
Mr. Chairman, move the bill, do pass.
you pass. Roll call. Any other public comment? All right, roll call.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Larson?
Aye.
Representative Sherwood? Representative Stitt?
Aye.
Representative Walters? Representative Zwanitzer?
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas?
Aye. We did it, 2 o'clock.
You want it?
I'll get it. And I will reach it. Thank you.
Okay, so committee will be, just so you know, we'll be meeting at noon tomorrow, and we'll do the feed bill.
Not this, not an adjournment today,
Nah, they want us to do it tomorrow.
but we don't have anything else?
All right, this is it, unless we get another re-referral.
Mr. Chairman, I did set up a meeting for upon noon recess
Yeah.
tomorrow for the 2 Senate files that we
Oh,
have.
yeah, and we're doing 2 Senate files tomorrow. One of them is appropriations bill, I forgot, and the feed bill. So,
Yes.
Okay.